What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of The Called. This is episode 8, and today I have a past SM from Majuro. Jeff, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah. What's up, everybody? My name is Jeff Fennell, and I am a junior here at Walla Walla. My major is engineering with a mechanical emphasis, and last year I went to Majuro, Marshall Islands with John, and I was teaching high school math there.
Yeah, so this is a very special episode, not to be too biased, but today we will be talking about, in my opinion, the best place to be a student missionary, Majuro. Yeah. And so just to kind of get into it, why did you choose Majuro in particular, Jeff?
I think that I kind of chose it almost on accident. There was one guy that I knew pretty well that had gone to Majuro before, and I play a lot of volleyball here at school at college, and he was on the volleyball team with me. And when I initially showed some interest, he was the first person that I talked to about it, and I was like, yeah, I know that you were a missionary, like, where'd you go? And he was like, oh yeah, like I went to Majuro. And he was like, I know a lot of people like go to different places. He was like, you should definitely like go into the office and check it out though. And so like when I went into the office to go sign or to learn more about being
Right.
at SM, and they're like, oh, like if you were to sign up like right now, where would you want to sign up for? I was like, oh. Well, I've only heard of like one place that I know that people have gone in the past, Majuro, because this guy. And so that's what I said. And then they're like, oh yeah, we got positions there. And I was like, oh, okay. So like, it was a little bit it was the only place that I had heard of that I knew people had gone to in the past. It just kind of ended up being that way. Yeah.
That's awesome. And you said that you were taught high school math there. Was that kind of to align with your major as an engineer, or how did you kind of choose that role?
Yeah, I wanted to do something that I felt like maybe other people would have, like something that other people might not be able to do, or something that like I could use like my talents or if you will, like to help teach that, because I know teaching like 11th and 12th grade math might not come easy for everybody, and it doesn't come easy for me, but I've at least had a lot of like experience with math as an engineer, and so I felt like maybe that'd be a good position to do, and I really enjoyed it, and it definitely helped me remember things from high school math that I had forgotten throughout time. So
yeah, for sure. And do you feel like that role was a little bit easier given your background, or was it just as challenging in your opinion?
Yeah, I think having a strong history in math, like going through all of high school math, and then in college with engineering, taking like the whole calculus sequence, definitely helped. And I think in the long run, it definitely made my life easier, because some nights when I didn't plan as much ahead of time, I could just kind of like look in the lesson book or look in the book and see what we were going over that day, and be like, oh yeah, like I remember how to do that. And I like not have to like read the entire like lesson, because I like for the most part knew what the concept was, and like knew how to explain it to an extent. Without having to like read over everything.
Yeah, and I mean that definitely will happen. I feel like as an SM, like whether you feel like you are the most prepared person or not, I'm sure there will be at least one day where you walk into your classroom, if you're a teacher as an SM, and you like have not lesson planned or even looked at what you're gonna cover the next day. I know that happened to me a lot, but luckily I was only teaching second grade, so it wasn't too bad, But I know for different roles, it's definitely, if you're kind of looking into what roles you can get into, one thing that a lot of people do is kind of just based off of what their strengths are. Like Jeff said, like, math is pretty critical to engineering. So that was kind of natural for him. If you're like a biology major or something like a science major, maybe, being a high school science teacher, English, et cetera, et cetera. But what were some things that about going scared you the most?
Uh, so I was scared by some of the stories from past SMs, like hearing about how maybe they didn't have the best of times, or maybe they didn't get
Mm,
along with their roommate, or maybe like I heard stories about people getting sent home for different reasons, because of like clashes in culture or things like that. And so I was scared, of getting in trouble, or like, not mixing well with like the group that I was going with, because initially, like when I signed up, I had no clue who would be like going to Majuro. Like I didn't know that you were going to be there, and Andrew and all these other people. And so I was like, shoot, like the year before us, there was like a big incident with some of the SMs, and it just didn't end well. And that was like on Majuro, and I was like,
mhm.
oh, like what if that happened to us and just like ruined our entire like SM experience? So I was really nervous that that things weren't going to go well, like with our group of teachers. Not, I wasn't as scared about like the culture or like being so far away from home. I think that was more like exciting to me than it was scary. I was more scared of like just not being able to get along with other people. Before going, the only other person I had ever roomed with was my brother, because we were roommates in college before I left. So, and like I know him well enough, but like having to like room with somebody new that I've never met,
Yeah,
and like all those things that come along with living with other people for an extended period of time, and just like getting angry at each other, I was
yeah,
afraid that was gonna take over. Yeah, luckily it
yeah, for
didn't.
sure. And I mean, when you're in SM, like it's something that you don't really think about, but there will probably be people with you that aren't even from Walla Walla University. I know on Major we had a couple different students. I don't know if you want to kind of talk about your roommate situation and where he was
Yeah.
from and stuff like that.
Yeah, so my roommate was from Brazil, and I met him for the first time like when we landed in Hawaii, basically, and did our little orientation. You do like a 4 day orientation when you go to the islands. And yeah, my roommate was from Brazil. He went to like a SDA university in Brazil, I forget, and he was from like Sao Paulo, or nearby, like in one of the smaller cities, I think, nearby there. And really nice guy. Like it ended up working out really well. Like initially, I was a little bit nervous. Like he didn't speak that much English, and I didn't know what to talk about with him. So a lot of times it was just like really quiet at night. Like we would be like, all right, yeah, like good night, man. And good night was sometimes like the only thing we said to each other. But like as time went on, we got used to each other, and man, his English got like amazing, and
Yeah.
our conversations just got like better and better as time went on. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one aspect that I don't think I've really talked about on this podcast, but just being able to meet different people outside of Wall Wall is super cool and unique because you're kind of just thrown into this
Yeah.
different world basically where you kind of either have to like force yourselves to either bond and get along or not. And
Yeah.
luckily, I feel like our group was pretty solid, especially the guys and everything. So and the girls, we only had two girls, so I guess that's probably
Yeah.
why. But regardless, but regardless, our group was very, very solid. At least for college students.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not speaking about the Filipinos, but at least for college students. And so I feel like that's one unique aspect about SMing that can be super, super, super cool.
Yeah.
But now kind of getting into, more about your actual role there. What did your day-to-day routine kind of look like on Majuro?
Yeah. So the the morning usually started off pretty quickly. I didn't like to wake up like a lot too much earlier than when school started. So like basically from the time that I woke up, it was like really quickly get ready for school, like shower and brush my teeth, and then head over to like staff worship. We would do staff worship every morning. And then in between staff worship and school starting, we had like maybe 15 minutes to like get the last few things ready for the first class, and then it was like right into homeroom. And like for most of the day, I was teaching just because of the amount of teachers that we had. It was necessary to basically be teaching some sort of class during every period, even if like I didn't just teach math. I taught like a life skills class, but it was necessary for us to be teaching basically every period. And so from whatever it was, like 8:30 or 9 or whatever until I don't know 2:15 or 2:30 in the afternoon, it was classes with a lunch break, obviously, but classes. And then as soon as school was over, um, most of the time we had some sort of sports team going on, and John and I and some of the other guys were helping with those sports teams. So after school, we would try to do some sports with the students, high school and middle school, before they went home for the day. Um, and and then after that, we would come back to our like teachers lounge and prepare a few things for the next day, and then go get some dinner or make some dinner at our apartment, and then like go back to the teachers lounge, finish up planning, and then like we usually had a little bit of downtime in the evenings to like play some video games or watch some TV, play some like board games, things like that. And then like it was basically time for bed and time to like get ready for the next day.
Yeah, so yeah, super packed day.
Yeah.
Especially because, and I feel like this kind of is, across the board wherever you SM, you'll probably have, other duties other than just teaching or whatever your role is. You talked about the sports events. And then I know we also had some different things to do on like Sabbath. I don't know if you want to talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So John is like super correct in saying that when you go to SM, you may sign up for like one role and then end up playing a lot of different roles or wearing a lot of different hats. So teaching was like our main responsibility, but different things on the side, coaching, sports teams. I know that some teachers were doing like IT work and working at the radio station that we had there, which is analogous to like the other islands as well. A lot of them have radio stations. And then on Saturdays, it was like helping out with church and helping out with the youth group and Pathfinders and branch Sabbath school. So like going out into the community and singing and doing arts and crafts and telling Bible stories to different students. And those were probably the three hats, like coaching, teaching, and then like Bible work were the three biggest, probably the biggest responsibilities as a teacher. And then just being like a parent as well, maybe to different students, feeding them and different things.
Yeah, for sure. And you were also ASB, right? You were on the ASB
Yeah,
team,
yeah.
and kind of the sponsor for them. So, yeah, again, like there's so many different roles that you can have, especially in the teaching positions. I feel like, just because you're so connected to the students
Mechanic.
and just you kind of can just do whatever you want. Yeah, mechanics. There's just
Yeah.
so much. But yeah, so like, what were some things on your? And you talked about this a little bit on the on your downtime. What would you do to kind of just relax and kind of recollect and just be recharged for the next day?
Yeah. So I think initially, like for the first few months, it was like, oh, like we got to get in the water, and because like you're surrounded by water on this
Yeah.
island, and so it was like, oh yeah, we got to get in the water like at least once a week, twice a week, do a little snorkeling. I know that John and some of the other guys like and girls did like scuba, so they were like doing scuba certifications and scuba diving. I did not, but I did do snorkeling and some adventuring, walking around. After school, like we would do coaching, and that was like a good like stress relief. But then also like just playing volleyball. There's a lot of like people that play locally, and so just like walking around and finding a game to play in myself instead of like coaching other people. And then at nights, it was like we as a group we really liked to like play Super Smash Bros, which is like a video game. While we were there, we ended up buying like an old Nintendo Wii, and off of eBay and bringing it over. Oh, sorry. Yeah, bringing it over, and so we messed around with that a lot. And vlogging was like another thing, and there's a few like different spots on the island where you could have a lot of fun like jumping into the water from different spots on the island from higher like places and movies, different things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that went a long way in just creating again like the bond that we were saying. Just
Yeah.
because honestly, like I feel like the group can make or break your year. I know it has for different SM groups in the past. Again, like Jeff was saying, people have been sent home due to just conflict between the SMs, and so just doing what you can to kind of be creative and doing what you can to do things as a group. I feel like we did a really good job about doing that. Like Jeff said, we were able to pull our
Yeah.
money together. We
Yeah.
played a lot of board games together at night, or like this dice game that we that we played.
Well,
Uh,
really.
yeah, ukulele, just kind of jamming
Yeah.
out. I know a lot of other islands did a lot of musical stuff, and so yeah, just doing what you can to bond is really, I think, a very important aspect of SMing. And again, for yourself, as Jeff's saying, I know he had a lot of time, or not a lot of time, but he would go out into the community and just kind of take time for himself to just kind of get away from like the SM staff and the SM like campus, and instead go out and kind of bond, which not in a negative connotation whatsoever. Like
Yeah.
not like he was able to have the opportunity to go and like kind of just go meet other people, relax, and just like play volleyball games and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which is super, super cool. But what would you say was like the hardest thing about your SM year? And that can be, whether that's teaching or things outside of teaching, anything.
So something that I guess I wasn't planning on was like having to deal with like deciding whether or not to go home early because of COVID. And like in April or March when everything started going like crazy in the world, and we started getting like emails and from different entities like within the church, like our school and the different conferences and unions in general, like headquarters and different things like that, kind of like trying to give us some advice on what we should do. And I remember like not being able to fall asleep for like 2 weeks straight. For like I would sit in bed and just think about like what am I gonna do, and like talking with my family back home, because we really like we're so far away from that point now that it seems so silly, because we kind of feel like we have things under control now, but like at the time it was just like everybody's like we have no clue what's gonna happen, like this could like be the end of the world or things like that. And I was like, do I go home and like be with my family, or do I stick it out and like finish out the mission? And I remember like just stressing so much over that, and trying to figure out like weighing both, like if I go or if I stay, and trying to like weigh the pros and cons, and talking with God about it a lot, and like trying to figure out I just didn't know what to do. Like
Yeah.
I had no clue. And that was really hard for me, and I know that it was also hard for a lot of other people, and like was talking with other people. It always seemed like one day I'd know, all right, yeah, for sure I'm staying, and then like the next day I was like, like I don't, like I need to go home. And so it was like just so like stressful for those first like 2 or 3 weeks where we were trying to decide what to do, until like the final, like we had like a date where it was like, all right, this is like the final decision. And then after that, like once we decided to stay, like so much stress was just like lifted off of me, and I felt like I could kind of like be myself again.
Yeah, I feel that. And hopefully, something like that doesn't happen for our future SMs going. The pandemic was definitely something that no one really saw coming. But at the same time, there will definitely be moments where you will have to kind of, think about big decisions or small decisions. And, those can, play a heavy impact on, your stress, your mental health and stuff like that. But how did you kind of, and again, luckily we did have the opportunity to kind of choose. I know some locations did not. But how did you choose to kind of stay in Majuro and kind of finish out your year? Like as far as like who you went to for advice, or you said talking to God about it. Just kind of take us through that.
Yeah, so a lot of it was like group conversation and like herd mentality. It was like, all right, like if we can get enough of us to like group together and be willing to stay, and it was like John and Andrew and Felipe, like who was my roommate. Oh shoot, hang on, the lights just went out. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Motion sensors.
Yeah. Yeah, like talking over with the three of you guys and being like deciding as a group, like we're gonna stick this out together and whatever happens happens. And we did like talk a lot about it as like a school like staff as well. And like I would bring it up during class even and talk with my students about it and just like bounce different things off of them to see how they reacted and to see what they thought about like what if I were to leave, and a lot of them would be like, would there be no more math? And I'd be like, no, there'll still be math. And they're like, okay. And then obviously, yeah, like talking with God about it a lot, like every night, like I said, just like thinking and talking and trying to like listen for a response. Talking with my parents back home. My mom was like super worried, I remember. And I was like, I didn't want to have her worrying the whole time basically. And so that was like one of the biggest things for me. I was less worried about myself, but I was just worried about my mom worrying.
Yeah.
And because I didn't want to like be unfair to her. And so trying to talk with her and like I guess like coax her into like being willing to let me stay was a huge like task that I had to like overcome in order to like convincing her to let me stay basically. And saying like there's people here like from Walla Walla who are gonna be staying with me and things like that, and I'm gonna be okay, blah blah blah. Like that was yeah. Those were probably the groups that I talked to the most.
No, for sure. And
Yeah.
I think you brought up an interesting point. Just kind of keeping your mom in the loop and your family in the loop of things. Hopefully this like a pandemic doesn't happen for future SMs. But communication is definitely like a big thing as far as like people back home. That's one thing that I didn't really like realize during my time there is that I was kind of calling my family back because I was having so much fun like on the island that I almost like would forget to call them or stuff. And that's like super not good for their own like sake, because like they're worried about you and stuff like that. So it's definitely always important to kind of keep everyone in the loop when you're making decisions, or even just during a normal year of SMing, because their life is just as affected as yours is, because obviously they love you and they want to like make sure you're safe. But I mean, kind of going on to something a little bit lighter. What was like the living situation for you in Majuro, just to kind of give folks an idea of what it would look like to live on Majuro?
Like honestly, all things considered, it really wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
So we had like an apartment. For the first half of the year, I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment with 1 bathroom, and I was living with my roommate from Brazil. And then in the other room, there's 2 other guys there, and we shared a bathroom, and we had a kitchen and an oven and a stovetop and a fridge and running water, running shower, a bathroom inside, everything. So everything that you would like expect to have in kind of like a normal studio or apartment. And for the second half of the year, once some people started leaving, we actually got to spread out a little bit more. So that was one of the like pros. We got to spread out. And yeah, the second half of the year, we had like a 2-bedroom apartment, and it was just me and my roommate from Brazil. So we each got our own bedroom for the second half, which was really nice, because then there was only 2 people there. But yeah, it was like pretty normal, like tile floors, a normal shower. The showers were cold. There was no hot water. Some of the things that like would bother me, I guess, were like different things would not work sometimes. So like the refrigerator would not work sometimes. The running water would like not work sometimes. And then there's like critters that would like come through the apartment and like invade depending on how often you took out your trash and cleaned. And so we kind of lived, I like to think of the situation, we lived with the ants and the cockroaches. Yeah, they were like our 4th and 5th roommates, and like like cockroaches and ants were the 2 like pests, and it was very hard to get rid of them because of just like there's no AC, so you have to have your windows and doors open to keep it cool. And then when you open up your doors and windows, that's when things get in. And yeah, there's also other critter. I know John dealt with like a rat at one point or a mouse. Yeah, and yeah. I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to say anything about that.
I mean, we don't really have to get into the rat story. But basically, I'll just give you a short rundown. Basically, there was a rat in my toilet. But we will kind of get into the nitty gritty on how I came to find that out. But anyway, yeah, I feel like one thing about, and I was kind of talking about this with Andrew on the last episode, is that another thing to kind of keep in mind when you're going to these different locations is usually the SM location does a pretty good job of maintaining like the status of living for you compared to like back at home. And a lot of times you're a lot better off than you are than the people in the community. I know like in our community, a lot of people would just kind of sleep on the floor. They didn't have
Yeah,
beds, stuff like that.
yeah,
They might not have running water. And one interesting thing was the people taking turns to sleep. I don't know if you want
yeah.
to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. We definitely had it. We had it like good.
Yeah.
In I guess so. A lot of the locals, yeah, like didn't have ovens, so they would come by and like ask if they could use our oven to like bake a cake. And then with sleeping, um, a lot of times these houses were like so full with cousins and aunts and grandmas and grandpas and siblings that there wasn't enough beds or space on the sleeping mat for everybody to sleep at the same time. So sometimes parents or children would stay up late and let their younger, usually like the younger ones, would get like first priority with sleep, and then they would take turns sleeping basically, and other people would sleep after those people woke up and started getting ready for the day. And so you would see like those effects in the classroom sometimes, depending on how many people lived in like a student's house. Some students were just like in a single family, but some students were living with like, yeah, multiple generations. And so they would come in and you could tell like some students were really tired, and
Hmm.
you it was easy to know why. Like they probably didn't get much sleep because they were either like taking turns or like helping with different things up late into the night, or like at funerals or celebrations that they didn't really have a choice, and so they had to stay awake all night for these
Hmm.
different things because that's just part of their culture, to stay awake and visit with family, that type of stuff.
Yeah. And that was one aspect that kind of like was a little bit of culture shock to me.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that came as culture shock to you while on Measure?
Yeah, I remember like being really frustrated at one point, with the fact that students would ask like the same two questions every time they saw me, and I didn't realize it was because they cared about me, but it was like they would always ask, "Where are you going?" Like if they saw me on a road or like at school or anything, it would be like, "Where are you going?" And I would have to like explain, even if I was maybe embarrassed as to where I was going, or I didn't have time to like stop and have a conversation. They would always like ask, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" And it's just like part of their culture because um, they're just like curious and they don't have too much to talk about. And so it's like, "Oh, where are you going? Like, can I join along or something?"
Yeah.
And then a lot of times, like in the culture, the kids would like share everything, and adults too, like would share everything. And so like if somebody were to ask you for food, you would most likely be expected to say, "Sure, like take some." And so a lot of times when these kids would ask me like, "Oh, what are you eating?" I would try to avoid that question just because I didn't want to have to like deny sharing food with them. And I think eventually like kind of learn to live with that and be more accustomed to it. But at first it definitely like bothered me at a certain point, like maybe 3 months in. I was like, gosh, like why do they keep asking me those same questions? But I realized that it's just part of the culture.
Yeah, no, they definitely had interesting culture, and I feel like you're gonna find that across the board with your SM locations. Differences in culture, obviously. But yeah, like talking about the sharing of food, I know like some of my kids would be like like eating a lollipop or something, and then a kid would come up to them and be like, "Oh, what are you eating?" And they'd be like, "Oh, it's a lollipop," and they'd be like, "Can I have some?" And then they're like, "Yeah, sure," and they'll just take it out and like put it
Yeah.
in their other mouth or something. Or like they'll be chewing gum and they're like, "Oh, mister, do you want some gum?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, sure," expecting them to like pull out like another piece of gum, but they're just like, "Here you go," and I'm just like, "Ah, I'll pass, I'll pass." But yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's definitely you're gonna experience some culture shock kind of no matter where you go, just because of the differences, of course.
Yeah.
But that was kind of one thing that is also a benefit at the same time. I know a lot of families took us in and shared their food with us on some weekends, or we had a friend that would take us out to eat. And I think that he was also accustomed to the culture of sharing, and that just kind of became part of his life, and which was a great benefit to us because
Yeah.
I know I didn't cook at all on the
And I didn't
island.
really either.
Like I know our meals typically consisted of like ramen, coconut bread,
Yeah.
some sort of juice, and maybe a bag of
Chips.
chips, and that was like breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, that was definitely something kind of to look forward to. As far as what pros you can take from the different cultures. Um, but kind of talking about now that you're back outside of your SM location, what is one thing that you were able to take away from your experience that you've been able to kind of put into practice, whether that is physically or just mentally, now that you're out of the mission field?
Yeah. So I think it has a little bit more to do with like being a teacher for a year, but coming back to college, I feel like I understand like the teacher's point of view a little bit more, and what they look for like in students, and what they try to think about when they're getting ready to give a test or give homework or things like that. And so like being able to understand the teacher's point of view has really
Mm,
helped me kind of, I think, do better in college. I think coming back, yeah, like I feel like I understand them a little bit better, and feel for them.
yeah, no, I would definitely agree. You kind of as a teacher, you kind of get annoyed of like the class clowns and stuff like that, which is like funny because like I feel like I
Yeah.
or you and I kind
Yeah.
of were like
Yeah.
kind of I feel like kind of like that in our own general classes and stuff like that. And so you
Yeah.
kind of get a taste of your own medicine in a sense. And it's just very it's honestly like humbling to kind of see
Like
just how
payback.
much,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, just kind of see how much teachers actually have to do outside of just teaching,
Yeah.
because there's so much
Yeah.
other things that they do outside of the classroom. And so kind of taking different perspectives from whatever role you might have, whether you're a teacher or you're a dean or you're some sort of medical assistant or nurse out in the field. You kind of get a feel for the real world, and kind of just humbles you. um, but kind of going back to your year overall, what was probably your favorite thing about your SM year?
Uh, I think I really enjoyed like just diving into the culture and like exploring it and learning so many new things, and learning, yeah, like more about the culture, the community, the people, things like that. Because I think both of us, like going into last year, didn't really know anything about the Marshall Islands and Micronesia and the people and the culture and anything, because um, we kind of like both thought it would, like, we didn't want to go into it with high expectations or any
Mm-hmm.
expectations at all, really. So we just kind of went blindly into it and like learned so much, like just more than I could have ever imagined, really. Just learning about a completely different culture and their way of life, and getting to experience that and become like kind of like accepted and a part of that, I think was really, really fun. Getting to know new people and meet new people, and I think like a lot of probably lifelong friends that we still keep
Mm-hmm.
in touch with, different people that we met, and definitely just like so much fun, like being able to experience that with other people who are in the same boat as me, like the two of us, just like being able to experience all of that stuff together for the first time, and like going through that journey was just like a lot of fun. Yeah.
No, yeah, for sure. And I know Jeff in particular was very adamant about just
Yeah,
going like head first into the culture. I know you were able to pick up a lot of the language. He was able to find Marshall's like language
yeah,
book while we were there through his connections that he made. And he was able to just like fully embrace the culture and just try to. And I feel like that was the best way to do it. To be honest, as an SM, that's how you have the best time. I feel like just because the people that you are with, as far as like the locals, they kind of see just how much you're willing to give and take of their culture, and they appreciate that so much. And
yeah,
that just strengthens the bond and the connection that you have with them. And honestly, you're probably going to have the best experience that you can doing so. um, and again, like you were saying, like doing it with people. I know we saw like Libby, another SN that went with us the other weekend, and she was like, "Oh, these are my brothers." Like, and it's true,
yeah,
bro. Like everyone you
yeah,
go with, your family, like straight up. And so, just kind of going through everything, the culture, the hard times, the good times,
yeah.
with your SM family, it really turns into a family. But if you were to, be talking to someone that was considering going to Majuro, what is one thing that, and this is something that you could have said before, but what is something that you would advise or say to them if they were thinking about going? And this could be something that, perhaps you wish you would have known before going as well.
Yeah. So, to like anybody who's interested or curious about SMing, I would say just like do it. I don't think that you will like come back and just regret like doing it. Like I feel like there's very few people who are like, man, I wish I didn't just waste an entire year of my life. I don't think so. I think that you'll learn and grow a lot from it no matter where you go. And I think you don't need to be like in too much of a rush to finish college. Like it's okay to take a year, because you have like the rest of your life waiting for you anyways. So might as well just do that. And then like if you're going to Majuro like in particular, like I would recommend bringing a pair of black pants, because I did not bring a pair of black pants, and I ended up like wishing I had brought a pair for like funerals and birthday parties and like anything where you needed to match with somebody. It was always like black pants and this shirt or this color shirt, or black pants and like a black shirt. And I was like, dude, I did not bring a black pair of pants, and nobody told me either, or else I would have. So I know it's weird, but bring a pair of black pants.
No, it's true. I mean, that's super specific, but it's true. I know a couple episodes ago I said like bring a microfiber towel. These
Yeah,
are just things that are like specific that you might not think of, but definitely if you're thinking of going to any location, talk to any past SM from that location specifically,
yeah,
and just maybe ask them for like a list of what they wish they had brought. Because I know there were a lot of times we'd be like Jeff was saying, either black pants or I microfiber towel
yeah.
or
Bring black
just
pants wherever you go.
any anything. Yeah,
Just do
so
it.
that's definitely a good thing to note. But yeah, man, I don't want to take too much more of your time. So if you have any final thoughts or closing words that you'd like to say, you can go ahead and do that right now. But if you don't, that's okay too.
Thank you, John, for doing this and inviting me to be a part of it. I am always glad to like share a little bit about it and talk about Majuro and you know. But yeah, thank you so much, and make sure to, if you're watching this, go to Majuro, because it's like the best location. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, I don't take too much more time. So again, I appreciate you for coming on and
Yeah.
talking about Majuro. And again, even though we are emphasizing Majuro, if you
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
anywhere,
Go
go
anywhere.
anywhere,
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
anywhere,
Go
go
anywhere.
anywhere,
Yeah.
go anywhere.
Yeah.
But
but
I will say,
but like
but
yeah.
but man. Anyways, thanks, bro, for coming on.
Yeah.
With
Thank you.
that concludes our eighth episode of The Called. Come back next week for another episode. And as always, if you are thinking about it, go talk to any past SM. Like Jeff said, he loves talking about it. So I'm sure if anyone
Oh
wants to
yeah.
hit specifics on Majuro or just SMing in general, I'm sure he would love to talk to you. I don't even have to ask him because I already know. And that goes for, I'm sure, a lot of past SMs, the SM office. This week we will have our exit retreat, but just because it is exit retreat does not mean that it is too late for to apply. So go ahead and come by the office or talk to someone, whatever it is. But yeah, with that, we'll conclude this episode. Thanks so much for listening, and tune in next week. See you guys.